Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 110. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at bjourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at networknerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, John, I'm just relieved that you finally figured out how to say episode numbers past 100 in a consistent manner.
Yeah, well, it took 5 or 10 episodes for me to figure that out.
Yeah, these things take time. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to virtual enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
All right, Nick. Hey, we're back for the second half of our conversation with our first returning guest, Mike Burkhart. Last week, we kind of broached the sensitive topic with him, dealing with personal loss. If you haven't listened to that episode, we'll put in a link to episode 109. And I think it's, worth listening to before we get to the second half. It really kind of was interesting how we transitioned from, again, this discussion of how to maybe support somebody who's going through personal loss. And I thought it was really interesting how he found some professional support, how he kind of stumbled into that. I don't want to ruin that, so I'll leave out the details.
Right. The only thing I would add there, John, is I think that listeners will see some examples of what good looks like and what maybe not so good looks like through Mike's eyes. And we don't always know that when we're offering up support for someone. I do like what Mike said about it's not about me or how awkward I feel, it's about the other person. So you're doing something for someone else that you have to put off these awkward feelings around social faux pas like talking about death and loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Talking about those kind of like, social no-nos, like we're kind of, it's something that we're apparently not supposed to talk about in society, or, maybe it's just superstition or whatever. But, I think breaking that taboo is, pretty important. And I think, this is a good first stop, just listening to somebody else's experience. So with that in mind, the second half of our conversation with Mike Burkhart, part 2, like I said, episode 110 with Mike Burkhart.
Do you get to a point in the process, Mike, where you want people to stop walking on eggshells around you and just treat you normal? Like, did that ever get on your nerves? Obviously, you want people to be empathetic and whatnot, but...
So, you teed me up perfectly, because what John just said about the delicacy of emotion and for you, are you ever tired of people kind of treating you differently, right? Because that's in truth, like, people don't know how to respond to that, and that's fair. That's fine, right? To be honest, it requires a certain amount of bravery on both parts. You need to be, as a person who's grieving, you need to be courageous enough to address your own situation and emotions. You need to go there. You may not need to go there with other people all the time, right? You may need a person who's a grief counselor like I have. You may need a trauma therapist. You may need just a close friend, or you may need a group that meets over Zoom, or some other future timeline where they meet in person, of course. But you have to go there. You gotta work it. You gotta work at it, because you're worth it, and you're a whole person with this event, with these feelings, And so you have to be courageous. You have to be brave. not that I'm calling myself those words. It felt at times like it was work, and it was, right? It felt like I had to just, okay, I've got to do this. On the side of the person who's helping the bereaved and helping the grieving, you also have to be courageous. You also have to be brave, because if you really, and again, this is all in my mind about, tapping into your human experience. With all of our, waspy Western sort of emotions are so tedious. Like, that's nuts. Just forget about that. Really, if you want to be a decent human being to people who are hurting, then you have to be brave enough to say, it's not about me. It's not about how awkward I feel. It's about how much I want to be there for you. And it is about serving you as a person. And if you were really going down that road, if you really want to, approach this, and if it's a person that you can get there with, really beautiful moments can happen. And yeah, there's a lot of crying involved. And yeah, there's, like, of course you're going to go through 17 million boxes of Kleenex, and you'll hear some awkward things said, and you may say some wrong things too, but there's so much forgiveness, right? There's so much forgiveness in that moment, because you're there, because you really reached that person, and you're reaching out and you're saying, please, somebody help somehow. And they're saying, I want to do that for you. And if you're courageous enough to do that, if you really reach down inside yourself and that's what you want for them because you love them, that, map it to, hey, here, just like John said, here are some things I can do for you. I can listen. I can sit in silence with you. We can sit, what, here, interesting story. I'm totally derailing myself, but why not? When I was in the hospital, so my son was stillborn at home. We were having a home birth, which are not dangerous at all. It's just dumb luck that this happened, right? 1 out of 160, mind you. So we had to call an ambulance, called 911, and he was rushed off to the hospital. And after he was declared deceased, and the doctors and the team had left the room, I'm trying to remember, it was a priest or a deacon. It was a religious minister that walked into the room, and he was there with a kind of an assistant, and both of them were like, we're so sorry for your loss, and we don't know if you're religious or not, or if you pray, but we're here to pray with you if you'd like. And I was like, to be honest, I'm not religious, but I do sit in silence, and I do respect the moment, and I want to respect my son's passing. And so if you'd like to do that with me, I would greatly accept it. And it was wild, because it was the first experience. They were the first two people to say, we're here for you if you need it. And I'm like, I absolutely do. Like, are you kidding me? I need all the help. And interestingly enough, I still remember, I talked to my grief counselor about this last week, and thank God she helped me look at things in a different light. There was a nurse in the emergency room that stuck around and, was trying to comfort me, and, in my time of need. And I resented her for it for months. I just absolutely hated her for it, and didn't know her, don't know the person at all, but I had felt in the moment that she was disingenuous. Her bedside manner was a bit awkward, and that's fine. She's used to dealing with people who are older dying, if at all, because her job is to make sure they don't. Or try to prevent that anyway, because making sure, it's impossible to have certainty, but she did her job. She did her job well, and she stuck around after to rub my shoulders and rub my back, and she just kind of was very, like, trying to get there with me, but it wasn't what I needed, which is really interesting because, like I said before, my love language is touch, like my major one, and this person touching me, I'm just, like, pissed at. And here come two Catholic ministers walking in the room, and, I was raised Catholic, but I'm no longer practicing, and I welcomed them with open arms when, and I'm like, how interesting, you know. Um, but it's all how you frame things. It's all how, it wasn't like a couple of Mormons bike up to the door and they're like, "Hey, you talk about our Lord and Savior? Oh, your son died," Like, these were genuine people with genuine responses, and the nurse was genuine too. She was so, like, I mean, her affectation and manner were like exactly how anyone would be. I just couldn't accept that from her. I needed someone to come and sit in silence with me while I cried and just cried and cried. And that's what helped, right? So if someone asks you if you can just sit there while they cry, it may be weird for you. Get some courage, dig down, dig real deep, be brave, and if that's what you want to do to help, be there. So that's it, really fascinating aspect of it is, what you need when you need it.
At least you knew in the moment what it was that you needed, right? And that version of quality time, I guess, right? Sitting in silence and being there to witness you experiencing your grief. And sometimes we just don't even have the wherewithal to understand in the moment what it is that we need. So it is good that you had a couple different, I guess you had menu options offered in different ways, right?
It was a la carte.
Yeah. Here's the touch. No, I guess that's not what that's not what
touchy.
you needed.
Don't want the combo. I want the a la carte.
Right.
Milkshake, how dare you? I want a salad. I do want to. I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to mention something that's terribly pivotal in my entire process. So, with respect to stillborn children or losing a child, it doesn't matter of what age, it changes a marriage, right? It absolutely changes the dynamics of your relationship, and I was actually story time. I was at the hospital for 2 hours by myself. And reason being, my wife had just given birth, so she was at home recovering. And, the police had come and there's a whole bunch of paperwork to do because, somebody died. So apparently someone has to be responsible and do paperwork. I don't know. But it was very, it was a very confusing sort of thing. She was recovering from giving birth. And so I was, the responsible party at the hospital, and there's no cell phone reception. So, that's a fun story. But I had time to think, and my brain started, doing the whole Brick Breaker, if anyone remembers that. God, I'm old, with a BlackBerry Pearl playing Brick Breaker. And, your thoughts are the ball just banging around against everything, and things are disappearing and going crazy. And, I thought to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to lose my wife. This is going to just absolutely destroy us. There's, because you tend to think the worst because the worst just happened. Right. And I thought to myself, I don't accept that in the moment. I've heard that this happens. I love my wife dearly. I love my life with her and with my family. And the first thing that I said to her when she came in the hospital, she was being wheeled in on a wheelchair, because hospital policy, right? And I said, "We lost the baby. I'm sorry. I love you, and we're going to get through this together." And I knew she already knew, because otherwise I would have been home. I would have had something to report. But so walking into that, and during the process, whether you're grieving or adjacent, I will say, acceptance is crucial. People will do and say a lot of things that may be good, bad, otherwise, emotional, emotions and responses being what they are. But in our early days and weeks together, we had nothing but acceptance with each other. And if anything came up that was like, that's weird, it was just, we just lost our child. It's okay. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to say things or be angry and upset. And, if you do take it out on somebody, apologize. But acceptance and understanding are absolutely crucial. And it's not just with stillborn, it's with any grief. If someone loses their job that they loved, if someone lost a parent, if someone got in a car accident that was traumatic, whatever kind of grief someone's going through, it's acceptance, understanding, and, how can I help a la carte?
You can get the combo too. There's multiple options.
Combo? I want a salad.
But I don't normally eat salad. That's just what I want right now.
It's a terrible salad too. I just
Yeah.
want it.
Well, I mean, I would imagine, I've never been through it, that there's a level of grief that we all can't quite understand for the person who carried this child to term for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
That is very different than, you experienced. And as you put it, yeah, definitely has to be understanding there too. And she probably can't understand a lot of the levels of grief you're going to experience as a father because she's not a father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's, that was kind of, it's terribly poignant that you bring that up. Not necessarily along the gender lines, right? And I know that's not what you meant. More of the experience and point of view, right? Like, so
Yeah.
nerd, TOGAF, viewpoints and views. So you've got people that, the CEO thinks this, and this is their viewpoint, it's the same. It's the idea that everyone is experiencing life from their own head, from their own persona. So with respect to a pregnant woman losing a child, that's not an identity that I can ever internalize. That's not a reality I can respond to, or even I can pretend, right? But unless I get, really big and then have a child, like that's not, even men being really fat, that's not the same thing at all. Like it's nowhere close. So,
Watch that eating your emotions, Mike.
That's why I want the salad. I swear we're just going to call this the salad episode. It's not even the grieving episode anymore. It's terrible. So anyway, but I talk to my wife about it quite often, and it's just in any type of grief too, right? Like it's, sons and daughters, wives, brothers, uncles, coworkers, whatever. We all have these different identities sociologically that we play out and that we identify with. And with respect to my wife, that, being her identity for 9 months was heavily ingrained. And, to not have a baby to hold and nurse caused her great pain, and probably still does, to be honest. I don't know for sure, but we do talk about this stuff regularly, and it's less hard, right? But in the very formative times of this, it was like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine. And for me, it was, I never got to know him. I didn't. And they say a lot, with respect to modeling, the heteronormative male-female breeding couple, that, that mothers know the child before they're born, and the fathers finally get to meet the child for the first time at birth, and the relationships are formed at different times. That they're, I don't know how much stock I put into that. Again, I try to be as active as a partner as I can. Sometimes annoyingly so. My wife does not like being touched, which is hilarious. Like, I mean, again, sitcom life at that point. She'll be like, like, give me a hug. And then she's like, okay, I'm done hugging now. But
Yeah, you can go away now.
yeah, it's true story. But
She needs her
it's
quality solo time.
she does actually. She has taught me the value of shutting up, if you can believe it. Um,
I need
Silence.
your act of service of stopping to stop touching me.
Yes, yes. Let me do you a favor and leave you alone. You want to read that book? Great. Uh, so, but yeah, so the difference in identity, the the expected identity and the loss of that identity, and I suppose we're lucky that we were already parents at the time. That we already had a child, um, and a living child. I have two children. One is dead, one is not. So I'm lucky that I have the live one. And I very much dug into that relationship, hopefully for the better. And hopefully, Milo doesn't listen to this podcast when he's older and say, "Good Lord, why didn't you leave me alone?" But, I very much focus my efforts on the things that I had, right? And that's even saying that feels good, right? In the moment, it's you know happiness is gratitude. Gratitude is acknowledging the things that you have and the goodness they bring into your life. And it's hard to be happy at that point in time, but it's good to be less sad, and it's good to have an attachment to the things that do bring you joy. So that was that was a great thing. But again, it's really interesting, right? I took on a lot of responsibility with my son, and my wife, at times would see our son Milo, and he looked a lot like our son Avery, and they both had red hair. They're both very similar facial features. They both looked fairly similar, genetics being what they are. So it was hard at times for her to parent up, and I will say this, another one of those things that's popping in my head. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was turtling up. I was absolutely reclusive hermit in my cave. But I did I did send a message out on Twitter, and that exploded. I never could have imagined the response that I would get from that. And anyone who's listening out there, thank you. Even if you didn't help or reach out or anything, we received so many different letters of care. We received gifts of food. People offered to babysit, people, like all sorts of stuff. One of the biggest gifts we received was there was just a line of people that said, I've been there and I'm sorry. And I mean, just for the sheer moment of someone, even on the internet, not even in person, but just sending a DM and saying, hey, my spouse and I lost a child as well, and it's terrible. And I'm here for you when you need it. That's another phrase you can use. I am here for you when you need it, right? And allow someone. There are still people I need to get back to be honest. There are people that months ago, almost a year ago now, reached out, and I want to circle back to, and kind of discuss and share experiences, because again, having that connection, sharing human experiences together, is really kind of what forges our experience in life, and it really bonds us together as people. So much like we're doing here, right? We're talking about grief, we're talking about experiences, and I'm hoping that this helps one person out there, so maybe this is my way of reaching back.
It's so interesting, the perspective that you have now, and I'm sure, over time it'll still change, right? But, it's like a planet getting hit by an asteroid. There's all kinds of collateral damage, right? And it sounds like, at a certain point you made a decision like, well, I'm drawing a line here, like my kid, my other son Milo is still going to have a father, right? my wife is still going to have a husband. Like there's things that I'm gonna cry and be sad for a long time, but these other aspects of my life are still going to be here. Like you mentioned, like Milo being like he still needs to be fed,
Yeah.
still needs to be raised, and then but at the
Still a
same
person in the house. Like,
and
well,
like sometimes I'm sure like that could have felt like, oh my goodness, like yet I have to care for somebody else. Why maybe I'm not even able to care for myself. But then at the same time, it's like yet another thing that's you're grounded to the real world.
mhm.
By no, I can't just wallow. Like I have to like there's parts of my life that just still need to go on. Period. It's a I guess life is all about like conflicting information too, and like both things can be true at the same time. Like,
It really like it really really is, and there's so many things that come to mind from that. Like, you know, we since we were graced with an abundance of food, which again, like we had water. That's a thing that we have in the house. Great. You don't feel like cooking food. You don't feel like there are things that I would be more embarrassed to tell you, but like you don't feel like showering. You don't. You just do not like. Uh,
that's just classic depression.
yeah.
Like that. I think that's you know welcome to the team, right? It's like
Yeah.
uh, Patton Oswalt, the stand-up comedian, has a whole bit about like I think going off as like antidepressants and like treating his like depression like this like dog who's like, I think you're gonna take me out for a walk. Oh, he hasn't showered in a day. Oh, is this it? Are we going out? I don't want to get too excited. It's a great bit. It's a great bit. But I totally empathize. Like I haven't lost a child, but I've been there. Like you
Yeah.
know it's like this like self-care stuff like that just falls by the wayside.
Hmm.
Like just fundamental, things that might feel fundamental, you know.
Yeah. And it really, I would love to tell you that, like, oh yeah, like I still worked out 3 to 5 times a week and ate good food, and I just really like I took the time to take care of myself. Like, no, no, you don't know how to take care of yourself. You just suffered just a great loss in your life, and you know, I I tell you what, like I'm not a heavy drinker. I don't use drugs or anything, but like I will eat some sweets. Like I will have a snack. I'll have a sweet treat. And my aunt sent me an entire cake. That woman sent me a cake. I wanted to eat that thing so bad. Like I was just absolutely like an addict next to my deep freezer because God knows that cake has to survive winter. And it's like the cake has fruit on it. It's buttercream icing. I already know I've had a slice, and you know, but it's not good for you. Like there are so many things that you just have. Like you're fighting everyday battles, and I kid you not. Like Milo probably thought he had the best parents in the world because he would just be like, "I want grilled cheese," and we're like, "Yep, grilled cheese, got it. That's yep. I want a slice of cake. Yeah, cake, good.
Done.
Yeah,
Oh, hey,
Bedtime? Yeah.
yeah."
there's somebody with the will to make decisions. That's great.
Right. We have things that are actionable. Fantastic. Like this child, I love him dearly. Oh my gosh, he actually would say, "All right, I'm ready for bed," and I'm like, "Yes." Oh, because we don't even know when bedtime is.
Right. You want to take the chocolate syrup bottle with you to bed? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hilarious because like we normally have like a like a 7, 8 o'clock bedtime depending on the day kind of thing, but if we didn't hit that schedule, he would just like he wouldn't melt down, he wouldn't go crazy. The kid would just be like, "You need to put me to bed." I'm like, "Did I do a good job so far? Because this is awesome." Wow, that's like one thing in my life going well. So, but yeah, no, so something came to mind with respect to accepting help. Um, so I I do want to tell you guys a little bit about my current position. I'm back in the partner space, I'm a cloud solutions architect at Elevate, and we're out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it's small company, but super expert people. And the owner of the company, Josh Vriesman, is a friend of a mutual friend. So Nick, I don't know if you remember Jen Slaybaugh, shout out.
Yeah.
From our start. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
she's a CTO ambassador as well.
Yeah.
This go around. So
yeah, she's a phenomenal person. Great friend, and has a dog named Meatloaf, which I can't adore more. It's awesome. But Jen had approached me a while ago and was like, "Hey, this guy Josh, he's starting up a company. You're really good in this space. What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, have him call me, or I'll work some side gigs. That's no problem." Josh actually approached me. I guess right after I quit my job with Nutanix, maybe a month after or so, I'm not sure, but and he'd asked me, could I work a project for him? I said, okay, well, I'll scope the project, I'll do this. And tell you another thing. This really, really weird thing that happened. Those of you that have lost children, if there is an autopsy, you want to make sure that the autopsy is full and complete. And I will leave it at that, because I had to rebury my son, because his body was not whole when we initially buried him. And I was very upset about that, to say the least. And I'll spare you the gory details, but burying a child sucks. Burying a child twice is traumatizing. And I was not ready to visit his gravesite. I was not ready to do things. So I had, gone into an agreement with Josh, and, I scoped this project, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to work it in November, December timeframe, have some cash on the table, and like, we'll be good, right? We're doing Cobra for life or health insurance stuff, and blah, 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 right? Cobra's expensive as all hell. If you have any other options, do it. But, it was what it was. So, I rebury my son, and I break down. I'm right there again. It's ripping the stitches on a fresh wound, right? And this guy is phenomenal. He's a phenomenal person. Doesn't know me from Adam walking in the door, right? And I'm just a person that is, a good resource for a really good project that's fairly complex. I'm like, okay, cool. But every day, every day, at least once a day, would kind of, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? As a person who's grieving, I will tell you what, the phrase "how you doing" or "how are you feeling," the response is always awful. Like unchanging, and but you come up with creative responses of that. So like, Nick, to your previous question of, you ever get tired of someone walking around on eggshells, and you're like, you get kind of used to it. But it's okay, because you become more honest, right? You eventually learn that it's more in your benefit to just be real with somebody, and then either A, they stop asking, which is like, okay, fine, maybe I want that, maybe I don't. But B, they could become more real with you. And Josh, like, met me there, and I have never encountered a stranger who was brave enough to really go the distance on that. And to the point where he told me one day, he's like, I was praying for you, and I was really trying to thank the Lord for you being around, and that that you're being taken care of. And then the song came on that I was listening to, and I just started crying, and it really was impactful to me. And I want to share this song with you. And I'm a musician born and raised, right? I grew up singing Motown with my mom, washing dishes when I was like 4 or 5, sang in choir as a kid, played in bands on stage, all the whole nine, right? My house is littered with instruments. So for someone to send, what's that?
And there's a guitar in the picture of Mike's video right now.
That's my stress relief. I unfortunately have a broken string. It relieved stress. So, so for someone, so for me, musician, right? IT is my third love. Music was my first. Language is my second. But for someone who's a musician, for someone to send me a song that they said this reminded me of you, and where you are in your path, and the song was all about not losing hope when all else is lost, and it was very it was soulful, it was mournful, it wasn't one of those like like it wasn't a happy poppy tune. It was absolutely like a beautiful female vocalist that was just espousing this like sorrow, and the refrain was just this: when all else is lost, you still have hope, and dig into that, and regardless of what that is, and yeah, like hope is intangible, right? Hope can be whatever it means to you. It could be I hope I feel better someday. It could be I spent a lot of days saying I hope I get another job. Thanks, Josh. But it is imperative that you find inside yourself the idea that things can eventually feel a little bit better. And it may feel like a lie some days. It may feel like the biggest lie you ever told yourself. But it does get better. And you do learn to, you learn to get up, you learn to take a shower. You remember that taking the dog out is something that you enjoy. And these minute metaphorical or even literal sunrises that you experience, it's a huge reminder of kind of a rebirth of your own. Not to be darkly ironic, but it really is you're coming out of the forest, and you can really appreciate the fact that you were in the forest and protected and sheltered, and you had so many hands guiding you out on the path. Not that there was one, but now there is. And that I'm getting shivers thinking about this. It's just like, again, I'm so terribly grateful for everyone who's been there for me, and for an employer, right? From Josh's perspective, for somebody who's got a good thing going on, and to reach out and say, hey, I'm going to be real with you, and I may not know what you're going through, but I'm a helping hand like anybody else, and the way that I can help is I can give you work. I can use you as a resource. And he even told me, hey, you tell me what's good and what's not. You need to walk away for a week, you tell me. You need the day off, you tell me. You communicate. And in the meantime, if it's a good day, you got stuff on your plate, make it happen. And if it's a bad day, that plate disappears. And
wow, that's really powerful.
Man, it is. I've never had an experience like it in my life. Never.
Talk about a blessing. That's fantastic.
It really is. God bless that man. And he's got a good thing going on. We've got a good thing going on with the business, and I've been having a great time there, but that's like totally secondary to the lifeline that I got tossed. And to have that, and it really was one of those like really funny things, because I kept on saying like, I'm probably not good for this. I'm not like, no, I am not your guy. Like, you do not want me in the state that I'm in. And he just kept on coming back to like, hey man, patience, patience and grace, and that's all. Just get through. Just work.
Sounds like he's a guy who understands how how grief works, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember, I don't remember exactly where I heard this, but it was the analogy was like for a long, long time you're living in this like grayscale life, right?
Yeah.
And then it's not like it's not like the Wizard of Oz where you open a door and all of a sudden everything's back in like, color. It's like the color just like slowly seeps back into your life. And sometimes so slowly that you don't notice it. And sometimes it goes back to black and white, right? Grayscale. But yeah. It's we put our lives back together, if we are blessed enough to do so, you know, with like leaning on a whole bunch of people. And I'm just really glad that you've had some of those people come into your life.
Thank you. And I am as well. I'm terribly grateful that I wish only the same or better for anyone else out there. It's almost serendipitous. It is, it is blessed. It is grace, and there have been many times, the phrase "I don't deserve this," right? It's a really interesting thing to say, but it came up on both sides of the scale, right? It came up, I lost my son. I don't deserve this. What did I do to deserve? It's not my fault. It's not, right? And that's fair to say. But receiving all of the goodness as well, and I don't deserve this. Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. And that's true as well. It. But a great man once said, "Deserves got nothing to do with it." So, and that's also true. Like I said before, having the courage and braveness to, or bravery, I suppose, braveness. I'm not sure if that's a word. But having the courage and bravery to really dig in and be real and authentic. Also have the humility to accept goodness in your life, and whatever form that may take. Know your boundaries, right? Be able to tell people where enough is enough, and your grief is about you 100%. But if you're overwhelmed by emotion, and if you're overwhelmed by experience, it's okay too. And for me, it happened, like I said, both sides. It was so dark and so depressed and just overwhelmingly terrible, and then being given that lifeline, and quite literally being told, just keep going. And I think that's a mantra, right? Like, keep going. I started writing through all this process. I realized there's not a lot of materials out there for fathers of stillborn children, and I don't know if I'll get anywhere with it. All right, it's been very therapeutic for myself, but I've got a lot of really good anecdotes, and one of them is, crying while doing is the new norm, right? And another one is just that, accept the goodness that comes to you in whatever form, and be grateful for it, and get through. Just keep going.
And does this ability to do a little more work produce like a semi sense of normalcy, or at least give your mind something else to focus on? Like, it's not that you're not still processing the grief, because that probably won't ever stop, but was it a little bit of a refreshing feeling to be able to put your mind and focus on something that you did before this happened, or something similar?
I will tell you that I enjoyed going on sales calls. And
Oh, man.
that was a thing for me that, had you put me, because I had left for Nutanix from a sales position, And I had not had another sales job after that, which, win, lose, or draw, take that for what it is. I started going on sales calls with Elevate, and still I'm having so much fun, because the idea is, and this is the mantra. This, like, do good work, and you know I was told that you sell the things that work for customers and solve business problems. And if what solves a business problem is a 5-second conversation with a customer, and instead of selling them a thing they told you they want, well, then have the 5-second conversation. you know and I've really been enabled to be that advocate and be the expert in a way that most of the time the business world doesn't allow you to operate, right? um, Capitalist society says you should sell things, and if someone wants to buy a thing, then you sell it to them, and you sell it twice, and you make sure you get 15 to 30% year-over-year growth, and ensuring capacity for VDI, VSI, and containers, and any other AI ML workloads that they may have, including blockchain and or it's
All part of the digital transformation process.
Yes, and it has digitally transformed my wallet. But no, I really am very derisive of the sales process. I apologize, and it's not that. It's not, right. But we all know that solving difficult problems sometimes is a culture change or an org chart realignment or a process evaluation, and sometimes that's not selling product at all. It's not selling an outcome that you can actually tangibly offer. But that's my boss's orders, and I was like, all right. And I've done it every time I've had a conversation with a customer is, does this solve your problem? Yes. Okay, great. We'll do it. And yeah, so I've having something to do, has it given me a valid distraction from my grief, which distractions are welcome, right? Yes. Has it reconnected me with my identity as a worker and as a provider? Absolutely. Has it also been a very gentle on-ramp, which I think everyone deserves, because I was able to go from 0 to 100, or 0 to 40, 50 hours a week, which is nice, at my own pace. And it was me telling Josh, hey, I'm ready. I'm going to go full time. And he was like, pull the ripcord, man. Let me know. And still, whatever you need, He was a little bit, it was funny because he was a little bit nervous about it. He's like, okay, I mean, are you sure? We weren't planning on this until sometime mid-year or something in our previous conversations. And, but it was funny because my grief counselor also said the same thing. She's like, you might want to go back to work full time. You're sounding like you're ready. You'd want to have some good work on your plate, and that it's going to be a good time. And you feel like you just want to get after some problem solving. I was like, I do. Dang it. So, but it was great. It really was. So, and I will also say this too. Having that type of understanding from an employer is rare, if not completely unobserved in the wild. So if you can have that, find that, take advantage of it. If not, then lean very heavily on communication. And, it is one of the most difficult things to navigate that space emotionally. Adding the complexity of, the working routine back in too early can be detrimental to your progress. Because
I was assuming that it was going to be part of you have to heal to a certain point. It's not the first step that you can take, right? Is oh, I'll just distract myself with work.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how the story started, right? And it wasn't working.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No, it was not working. but yeah, it's, and it's curious because I wondered to myself, like, you know, if I were a yoga instructor full time, right? If I were like, if part of my daily practice was like meditative, rejuvenating, whatever, as income, you know, would I have wanted to work more, right? What does that path look like? Which again, I don't know the answer to that. I think there needs to be a period of healing, however you recognize and realize that. Um, but yeah, I would be fascinated to find other people and their responses. Most typically, what I hear from others is there has to be a break from who you were entirely, um, from certain aspects, whatever that is. I believe before the recording we were talking about, you know, shifting places around in an office, right? Or changing perspective, changing, uh, your experience or routine. For me, it was I had to leave a job entirely, which was problematic for me. I don't, I like to leave work well done and things completed and finished. And I was midway through a project, but I got a sprint done. But that was, when I had to call it quits. And but then you have to reintegrate, uh, and find where your experience fits again. You know, and it's never exactly the same thing. My grief counselor likes to say, um, you find something to live for, and you pursue that, and it's the experience of it. As soon as you say, like, well, I'm really living for this, like I'm living for, and for me, it's yes, my son Avery is, he has passed, and I do live to honor his memory. Um, but I also, I'm so grateful for what it opened my eyes up to. Um, I will always love him, and I will always, wish that I had my son, right? I can't be grateful that he died, at least not right now. I don't know that I ever will be, but I can at least be very grateful to realize that so many people in so many different ways have, given and opened my eyes to giving back, you know. So it really is amazing. It really is. It's tragic, it's heartbreaking, and it's beautiful all in the same.
Well, thanks for modeling this for us and talking through the process, especially coming out the other end and the reintegration. But, I don't want to minimize like the painful part of that, coming out the other side is always, better, right? And it's not a given. So
No.
I'm really glad to hear, that you're doing better now. I mean, I know that, things are bad and
I just want to say thank you, Mike, because I was hesitant to even ask you to come on the show because I was actually afraid by asking you to share this story that I might have been asking too much of someone. So I appreciate you letting me reach out and say, hey, I think you have a story that would be really helpful to others about how you've dealt with it. And I think we can all learn something from it. I know I certainly have, and I'm sure John could say the same. So we really appreciate that.
yeah, and it's never going to be a complete story, right? We're just getting the snapshot of where you are right now, and we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough for allowing me to share it. When Nick, when you reached out and said we're going to do an episode of grief, what do you think? I was like, I think we need to do that. I think that it's something that needs to be discussed, that needs to be in the open, and it doesn't matter to me who is subject to this. It's valuable to share experiences. especially with something that's so little talked about. So thank you guys so much for allowing me to come back. And it was a lot. I did take a lot of your time, and it's worth every minute of it to me. And I hope it's worth every minute to you and to the listeners. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and for those guests out there, if you tell me we should do that, be prepared for me to follow up until you do it.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks again so much for giving your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll have you on again for even other, even more, hopefully less painful, but still other interesting things that are going on with your life and with your career.
I think it really depends on the stats at episode 200, John.
Yeah, we'll check that out.
Are you telling me I need to buy more devices? Because I'll do
That's what
it.
it sounds like.
Like get 400 iPod Nanos for no reason other than to download podcasts.
Oh my goodness, that has to be a real thing.
Gotta Google that now.
Okay. All right, take it easy, Mike.
You too. Thank you guys so much. Take care.
I have to say, John, it takes a lot of courage to come on any podcast or something that's going to go out to the public and talk about an experience like this. So kudos to Mike, and many thanks, Mike, for letting us solicit you into doing this.
Absolutely.
But it definitely takes courage, and it's still something that he's dealing with. I mean, he's going to be dealing with this grief for a long time. We got to hear a lot about his progress, and it was really eye-opening, I have to say. Everything that happened from the time it happened to how it affected his job at Nutanix to how it eventually led to a new job. Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's something that we said before, probably not something that you can prepare yourself for, because how could you? But just thinking about, what grief can look like, I think can do a little bit to help prepare you. What if I do react this way to something happening in the future? Am I working at a company that will support me? Do I have people around me who can support me? I think we talked a little bit about it. Mike was working for a company that allowed him to take 30 days off, but that was about the limit. He had to take unpaid time off after that. And then he came back too early and, had like a really negative impact on his job performance, just his ability to, support his family emotionally. And it ended up with him like having to leave that organization. So, maybe there's a lesson there, but, it's also just that interesting experience of grief that I don't think I'd ever thought about before. And I'm not sure exactly why, but it was, just really eye-opening. And again, Mike, thanks so much for sharing your experience. And, allowing us to kind of look into what that process might look like, what your personal experience was, and to get some perspective, out, as you're coming out from the other side. Really appreciate that.
One last thing I want to mention here, John, is Mike sent out a tweet when this first happened to him, just letting the community know, sort of a status update, if you will. And he mentioned that the amount of support that he got from that one tweet was completely overwhelming. He had total strangers reach out and say that they had been through something that was exactly the same or very similar, and it stinks, and that they were here for him. And I think that level of community support is really important. You want to be able to talk to someone who can identify with you, and it kind of makes you want to give back and support others in the same way that someone else supported you.
Absolutely. And if you can't support, somebody who's in that specific situation, obviously because maybe you haven't gone through, something exactly like that. And maybe they're looking for somebody who's gone through exactly, their situation. Well, maybe you can save up that feeling of support for somebody, who is going through something that you do have direct experience with. Give your support the way that you can, but not expect that person, have the ego to require that person gets their support from you. Because then it's about you and not about them.
And hopefully if you're out there listening to this, you realize the importance of getting support from someone, somewhere outside yourself, outside your family, whoever that is or whatever group that is. It's important.
Yeah, definitely. Like isolation is so dangerous, isn't it? I mean, you can maybe see that you need some alone time, obviously, but then, I think all of us are stronger with support. And it's, I don't know, we're programmed as maybe men, for example, to believe you need to be that strong, supportive figure and, needing support is weakness. And I don't think that's true. We need to break away from that image of masculinity. All right. Anything else before we get out of here, Nick?
No, sir. I'm not so masculine that I don't know when it's time to wrap up. So just a reminder, we want people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter @NerdJourney.
All right. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White, @VJourneyman, for Nick Cordy, @NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios.